Hey friends, Separatist Worm here to bring about division into our wonderful little community with a conversation in regards to one of the age-old debates in Destiny 2. Of course, the other day we were talking about cheaters, Cronus, Zim, stuff like that, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. And somebody brought up a good point in the comments sections in which they mentioned basically controller on PC, and how it's busted, or MNK, something about MNK and controller. So I figured today we'd do a small video talking about MNK and controller and talk about an idea of how potentially Bungie could fix the debate. But yeah, let's talk about it. So of course, it's an age-old debate. Controller on mouse and keyboard, or controller versus mouse and keyboard, I should say. Controller versus mouse and keyboard, because on one hand you have, MNK elitists saying, oh, it's not fair, controllers have aim assistance and it basically aims for them, and I can't crouch shoot because when I crouch shoot, their aim assistant just magnetizes bullets to their head. But then on the other flip side, you have controller players that say, oh, it's BS that MNK players, like they have no recoil and they have the precision aiming that I just don't have on a controller, blah 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 blah. Yeah, it's been existent literally forever, and it will continue to exist forever. But how can Bungie go about mitigating the issues between, or I should say the disparities between controller and mouse and keyboard? And I think it's quite simple. Currently in Destiny 2, the player bases are divided by console versus PC. Okay, which is, obviously, console players play on controller, and then PC players mostly play on MNK. But if you're like me, you plug in a controller, and you play on controller on your PC. I think that an easy way to fix this would be no longer separating PvP lobbies between, console and PC, but now separate them based on inputs, controller and mouse and keyboard. Okay, and this is, obviously this would solve a lot of issues, which, we've kind of discussed already, the debates between, oh, well, it's not fair because I'm on controller and I'm playing a bunch of MNK users and they just have perfect aim, blah, 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 stuff like that. You wouldn't have these issues anymore if Bungie were to do that. Now, this is not some revolutionary idea that I came up with overnight. Like this is a thing in many other games. Call of Duty, for example. Call of Duty is a huge title, big AAA title. They, at least since 2019, have been dividing lobbies based on a controller and mouse and keyboard. Okay, and the game, if I'm not mistaken, Call of Duty favors, putting MNK users in MNK lobbies. And so the matchmaking would basically work with this, in Destiny 2. Of course, you load in to Destiny 2, and you go to your settings. Anytime you're in the menu, you can use your controller or you can use your mouse and keyboard, no problem. I don't have an issue with that. But when you went to your settings, there was an option under controls to what is your input style. Okay, and you had to select controller or mouse and keyboard. Then while you're in orbit, or in a menu or something like that, you can use your mouse and keyboard to select your stuff, or your controller, obviously, if you want. But when you are back in game and you're actively, controlling your character, it's no longer, you no longer can switch between the two. It's now, if you try to pick up, controller and use your controller, for example, and your input is set to mouse and keyboard, you get an error message saying, please, leave whatever and switch to controller, or something along those lines. And then vice versa, on MNK and control, if you play on controller and you're using MNK in your settings, and you try to use MNK in game, it's going to say, hey, please switch back to controller, blah, blah, blah. And then put players in their respective lobbies. And I think this would obviously, like I said, it would reduce the amount of complaints that we get from people saying, oh, it's not fair because controller is this or MNK is this. Me personally, I don't have an issue. I think controller has benefits. I think MNK has benefits. And the fact that both sides complain about equally tells me that, like, it's pretty balanced. But hey, you know what? Why not make everybody happy by making this, this simple change? And like I said, it's not a new idea. Tons of games do it. Yeah. The issues with doing this, however, of course, the primary issue would be the number of players that are in MNK lobbies versus controller lobbies. Obviously, like there are way more console players than there are PC players. Okay, so if you take all the console players who are playing on controller, and put them in their own lobby, and then add PC players who play on controller, you're gonna have like 80% of players playing in controller lobbies, only 20% playing in mouse and keyboard lobbies. This might make mouse and keyboard lobbies take longer to fill up. Trials games would take longer to, fill. Other PvE games, PvP game modes would take longer to fill, because now not only is Destiny searching for, through everybody who is, your rank, whether you're this MMR, whatever, MMR, I guess that's the term. But now it's got to filter out whether you're on controller or mouse and keyboard, and obviously for controller players like myself, it wouldn't be an issue, because there are literally tons of controller players. Like, most people play on controllers. It wouldn't be an issue. But for M&K players, because obviously M&K players, they need to be able to find games too, it might take longer. And that's the only issue I could really see happen, coming about, I should say, with if Bungie were to add this feature into the game. But however, I think there should be, safeguards to prevent, long matchmaking times. For example, if you are in a lobby for X amount of time and you are at, let's say your Guardian is, rank 3 in the MMR system, 3, and then the highest rank is like 10, just for an example. Okay. Your Guardian's a rank 3, you're playing on mouse and keyboard, it's not finding anybody, it's not finding a lot of people that are in your same lobby. So then it kind of broadens the spectrum. Now instead of searching in just 3, it's going to look for mouse and keyboard players that are in, 2, 3, and 4. And if it can't find anybody in that, then it's going to start pulling controller players, but then the controller players are going to be anywhere from 2, 3, and 4 and up. And that way, it potentially reduces the amount of matchmaking time that we have, because obviously, especially at the higher end of the skill gap, we already know there's a problem with really, really good players finding matches. Take True Vanguard, for example. I think he did a rant video a couple weeks ago where he talked about matchmaking time just taking, too long. He's sitting in orbit for 2 to 3 to 4 minutes waiting on a lobby to even fill, because he's so high level that they don't, Destiny 2 doesn't want him playing with, him who's, like rank 10, for example, in terms of the, on the scale, matching with players that are 3, and that's respectable and understandable. And it would be a cause for concern for M&K players. But at the same time, it would also eliminate a lot of the constant complaining that we have from the community about M&K and controller. Because I get on the forums, I get on the Facebook pages, the subreddit, stuff like that, and it's like, it seems like at least 2 or 3 times a day somebody's posting, oh, like, M&K is BS, like or controllers BS, like blah blah blah, stuff like that. And it would be a simple fix. Really, it would be a simple fix for Bungie to add a tab, what input do you want, controller or M&K? Then, okay, M&K controller, blah, blah, blah. And yes, it's inevitable. There are going to be those peoples that use some sort of, software, hardware to spoof the game and make them think that, their controller is an M&K, or their M&K is on a controller. So you're going to have people playing on M&K in controller lobbies. Like, it's bound to happen. Obviously, if they would do what we talked about on Friday and, outright ban people who use Cronus and Zim and stuff like that, we would see a substantial drop in, M&K players spoofing, the system and being able to play in controller lobbies. But, whether they get on that, we talked about that on Friday. But yeah, that's, I don't think you'd see a lot of people trying to trick the system. And if you did, like, it's going to be 1 in a million. It's not that big of a deal. Then the other issue I guess you could bring up is, what about players who like to play, with other people? Let's say you have a clan, there's 6 of y'all, and 3 play on controller, 3 play mouse and keyboard, for example, and y'all like to play PvP together. I don't think, obviously, that you should be excluded from matchmaking, like, oh, like, please, forcing a mouse and keyboard player to switch to controller or vice versa to play with their friends is an absolute no-no. But I think that, again, going back to what Call of Duty does, Call of Duty filters out, it prioritizes M&K players in M&K lobbies. Okay, so take for example, you've got you and your 5 friends. Okay, so 3 of y'all are on controller, 2 of y'all are on M and K, or hell, 4 of you are on controller, and 1 of y'all is on M and K. And when you search for a fire team, the game is going to put you with M and K players. Okay, and also I think that would help because also like I said, with less M and K players that actually in the pool, it would definitely help sorting people on controllers and say, hey, you know what? Since you're in a fire team with somebody on M and K, we're just going to put you in the M and K matchmaking pool. I think that would be, I think that'd be a pretty fair, thing to do. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts on mouse and keyboard versus controller. I really can't think of anything else to talk about in regards to that. Let me know your thoughts though. Obviously, if you hate playing against controller players and you're on M and K, I want to hear about it. I want to hear about why. And not just the same old thing I always hear, oh, well, I hate playing with controllers. They have aim assist. Like I need more specifics. Like, is it the bullet bending? Is it like I can't crouch shot? Like I want to hear why. And obviously if you play on controller and you hate playing against M and K people, I know why. But I guess you can tell me that too in the comments below. But also, what are your thoughts on Bungie actually dividing the community instead of console versus PC into inputs? It's now mouse and keyboard versus controller. I personally think that it would be a decent idea, especially with the safeguards in place to make sure that, M and K players don't struggle, forever to find a lobby. But yeah, that's it for this video though. Of course, if you like the video, drop a like. It really helps the channel out, and we do stuff like this almost every single day of the week. We do conversations, stuff like that. And drop a subscription too, because we do this all the time. We like to have fun. We like to talk and stuff like that. But yeah, that's it for me, guys. I will catch y'all in tomorrow's video where we're going to be talking about a spicy weapon that is very, very divisive in the community. But yeah, that's it for me. Bye for now.